Hello and welcome back to My Hunting Journal. In this podcast we talk about hunting, shooting, and the great outdoors. For those of you who missed it, I recently uploaded a YouTube short to my YouTube channel in which I was showing the process of fire forming brass for my 280 Ackley Improved. In that video I showcased some of the differences between the fired brass with a sharper neck angle versus the unfired brass of 280 Remington with a more shallow neck angle and a case that is echoing the looks of the beloved 30-06. Now, this video got quite a few views, but it also got a lot of comments, and I figured I would take the opportunity to respond to some of those comments. So I wanted to have a short conversation about the 280 Ackley Improved, some of the advantages of the cartridge, and some of the reasons why it makes a lot of sense to shoot the 280 Ackley Improved. Now, I want to caveat this video by saying if you have a similar cartridge already, such as a 7mm Remington Magnum, or a 30-06, or even a 7-08, any of those cartridges are really solid choices for big game hunting, and there's not really a huge reason to switch it up if what you're using right now works for you. However, if you're looking for a new cartridge and you don't mind hand loading your own ammo or working a little bit harder to find factory ammo, I believe the 280 Ackley Improved is worth looking at. I really believe that the 280 Ackley Improved is probably the best balance of recoil, power, and frontal diameter for a bullet for hunting in North America. Now, I wrote some notes here about the history of the 280 Ackley Improved. The 280 Ackley Improved comes from the 280 Remington. That is, this box of ammo I have here in front of me if you're watching on YouTube. This is a box of 280 Remington core-locked tipped ammo. And if you were to take a look at this ammo, it's not hard to see where they got the design from. This 280 Remington was released in 1957 by Remington Arms. And ultimately what it was is taking this cartridge here, which is a 30-06 Springfield, and sizing that neck down so that it would grab a 7mm projectile. So if you look closely at these two cartridges, they're very, very similar. If I set them on the table, I hope that's still in frame, you can see the overall length is very, very similar. The 280 Remington is just a touch longer. And so some people would say that the 280 Remington is not a descendant of the 30-06 because of that longer case length. However, the 270 Winchester is the exact same thing. It's common knowledge that the 270 Winchester came from the 30-06 case. However, it has the exact same, slightly longer case as the 280 Remington. So this 30-06 really has been the father of a lot of really effective cartridges throughout history. And Remington decided to play off of that, neck it down to a 7mm projectile, which is a 284 caliber, or a 28 caliber projectile. And they took this 7mm round and released the 280 Remington, which initially was not really a big success. Part of this might be because it was overshadowed by the famous 7mm Remington Magnum that 7mm released. And the 7mm Remington Magnum at the time of release boasted higher chamber pressures, which allowed them to load it a little bit hotter and produce just slightly more velocity than this 280 Remington. But also, I believe part of the failure of the 280 Remington was due to a poor marketing by Remington Arms. And part of this is because this cartridge was released in 1957 and then re-released in 1979 is the 7mm Remington Express. And as the 7mm Remington Express, it brought about confusion in the commercial market, where customers were equivocating the 7mm Remington Express to the 7mm Remington Magnum. And they were wondering what the difference was. And looking at the two cartridges, the 7mm Remington Magnum was ultimately the clear winner in that comparison. And so the 7mm Remington Magnum took off to be the commercial success that we know today. Well, the 280 Remington was kind of left by the wayside. Eventually, Remington Arms did revert the name from 7mm Remington Express back to the 280 Remington. And this ultimately brought about more confusion because guys didn't know, was the new 280 Remington the same as the old 280 Remington? Was it the same as the 7mm Remington Express? And although all of these cartridges were the same, just operating under different names, it confused the market and produced a lack of response in consumers as far as the desire to get a rifle chambered in 280 Remington. P.O. Ackley is a famous gunsmith who's done a lot of work for creating cartridges that are well loved by many. P.O. Ackley, standing for Parker Otto Ackley, was a wildcatter, meaning that he designed a lot of his own cartridges. Now, P.O. Ackley was a little bit unique because he didn't necessarily design a cartridge from the ground up. Rather, he modified existing cartridges. And the process that he used to do this is now known as Ackleyizing a cartridge. And this is just a phrase that was coined just to talk about blowing the shoulder out on a cartridge to a sharper angle. And if you look at these two cartridges side by side, this is the 280 Ackley Improved. This is what Parker Otto Ackley did to the 280 Remington. He took the 280 Remington, blew that shoulder forward just a little bit, and blew the shoulder out to a 40-degree shoulder angle, which allowed him to get just a little bit more powder behind it. And with modern bolt action actions, he was able to contain a little bit larger pressure, which ultimately brought the 280 Ackley Improved up to more modern performance levels. It was about 200-ish feet per second faster. As a matter of fact, this box of 280 Remington says out of a 280 Remington, this 140 grain bullet should be going about 3,000 feet per second. And that's for a 140 grain bullet, which is a little bit small for the 28 caliber selection. I mean, you could get 140 grain or even 150 grain bullets in a 27 caliber or a 270. As opposed to this 280 Ackley. Now, the box velocity on this round is only 2850, but it's for a 162 grain bullet, which is a sizable difference. So this 280 Ackley Improved, you're losing just a little bit velocity as the posted velocity, but I've actually chronographed these two rounds, and interesting enough, the 280 Remington on the chronograph is only reading about 2850, whereas the 280 Ackley Improved is reading about 2870. So for a 22 grain heavier bullet, you're getting an additional 50 feet per second by having just that little bit more gunpowder behind it. And I'm convinced that if I were to hand load for my 280 Ackley, I could get a little bit more velocity out of it. I know guys with 280 Ackley Improves who regularly hand load 160 to 170 grain bullets up to that 3,000 foot per second threshold. And that's part of what's special about the 280 Ackley Improved. The 280 Ackley Improved is capable of launching even the heaviest 7mm projectiles. For example, 195 grain Birder Extreme Outer Limits at about 2,700 to 2,750 feet per second, or 168 grain Birder VLD at somewhere about 3,000 to 3,050 feet per second. And to be able to push bullets that heavy at velocities that fast really introduces a lot of capability in big game hunting. Now, on that YouTube short that I posted about fire forming my 280 Ackley brass, I had one commenter tell me that ballistically speaking, there's virtually no difference between the 280 Remington and the 280 Ackley Improved. This is ironic because when it comes to the ballistic difference between the 280 Ackley Improved and the 280 Remington, there are quite a few differences that are worthwhile. You're gaining the ability to shoot much heavier, high BC bullets, and you're still using really useful velocities. As a matter of fact, the 280 Ackley Improved is often compared to the 7mm Remington Magnum because that extra 150 to 200 feet per second that it gets over the 280 Remington brings it within a really narrow margin of that 7mm Magnum. Now, another commenter mentioned that he thought I was wasting my time because by fire forming this 280 Remington brass, I was paying roughly $2 per piece of brass. And the fact is, if I was fire forming this ammo just to get the brass out of it, then he'd have a point. You know, I would be paying about $2 per brass, and that's not a very good trade-off. However, the fact is, this 280 Remington ammo, this 280 Remington core lock tipped bullet is actually performing really well out of my 280 Ackley Improved. And I actually think that this is the ammo that I'm going to take with me spring bear hunting this upcoming spring for 2024. That being said, I don't consider this a waste, I consider this practice with hunting ammo. And realistically, this 280 Remington can be had a lot cheaper than 280 Ackley Improved ammo, so I can shoot it out of my hunting rifle and get a lot better practice than if I were to shoot a different rifle, say a 223 or a 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm shooting it out of my actual hunting rifle and putting actual rounds on paper, and it gives me the ability to really work on the fundamentals and dial in my skills with that rifle. The other ironic part of this comment is that almost any centerfire cartridge that you find today is going to be about $2 to $3 per round of factory ammo. So, to recap, why would I choose the 280 Ackley Improved as opposed to other modern day cartridges? Well, I would choose the 280 Ackley Improved over the 280 Remington because, as I said, I'm shooting about 150 feet per second faster than a 280 Remington. This gives me a flatter trajectory and a little bit more energy downrange. The 280 Ackley Improved versus, say, a 270 Winchester, which is really similar. If I were to take that 30-06 and instead of necking it down to a 7mm, neck it down to a 277 caliber bullet, that's how you get the 270 Winchester. And the 270 Winchester can shoot a 130 grain bullet at about the same velocity that the 280 Ackley Improved shoots a 150 grain bullet. Being a heavier projectile, the 280 Ackley carries more energy downrange, and it maintains a really similar trajectory and maximum point blank range. If both cartridges are fired with bullets of the same weight, the 280 Ackley Improved has a flatter trajectory, but the 270 Win offers just a slightly higher ballistic coefficient and sectional density. And so, realistically, the advantages of the 270 Winchester over other cartridges, being a fast and flat shooting cartridge capable of taking big game, are about equal with the 280 Ackley Improved. You can take the 280 Ackley Improved and hold it up against the venerable 30-06 that so many love, and you can look at it and say, well, you're getting significantly less recoil, you're getting really useful bullet weights, that 160 grain range of bullet weight, and you're actually getting much more velocity than the 30-06 because it's a little bit more gunpowder than that 30-06, pushing a similar weight bullet. So you're taking this 280 Ackley Improved and putting it up against other modern day centerfire cartridges. I think it's clear that the 280 Ackley Improved has some legs to stand on in the conversation. Now, possibly the most apples to apples comparison, if you will, would be the 280 Ackley Improved as opposed to the 7PRC. I've been seeing this a lot on online forums lately. I've been seeing a lot of questions about the 280 Ackley Improved versus 7PRC. I've seen guys who shoot 280 Ackley Improved be talked down to by guys who shoot a 7PRC. But the reality is, even though they're shooting the same projectiles, they're both shooting 7mm projectiles, the 280 Ackley Improved has significantly less recoil, burns significantly less powder, and for most hunters, will have more than enough energy for anything they mean to do. I believe the 280 Ackley Improved is capable of taking down even the biggest game in Montana, being big black bears or big bull elk, all the way out to about 500 or maybe even 600 yards, which means that the 280 Ackley Improved's limits are far beyond my own personal limits and far beyond the limits of many other hunters out there. The 7PRC really shows its advantages at those longer distances of 600 to 800 yards. And if you want to shoot game that far, by all means, get a modern day cartridge like the 7PRC. But the 280 Ackley Improved was invented many years before, matter of fact, many decades before the 7PRC. And I believe that it holds a place in the market today. This has always been an interest of mine, and it's slowly becoming my all-time favorite cartridge for Western big game hunting. I hope that this video has helped you guys. If you have any other questions about the 280 Ackley Improved, Or if you want me to do similar videos on other calibers out there or cartridges, would you please leave a comment down below on the YouTube video, or send me an email at myhuntingjournalpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening or watching, and God bless.